Hello everyone, what's up? Principal Teen here with another episode review of The Mandalorian. Today we're taking a look at Chapter 23, The Spies. And I said last week that based on the things I saw online that came out of Celebration, this week's episode was going to be bonkers. And bonkers it was. Talk about an episode. I mean, wow. Lot of stuff happened in this episode. So right off the bat, I think this is more of what people were wanting from the episode, because this was a lot of intrigue and action, and not so much side quests off with Jack Black and Lizzo. So I think a lot more people enjoyed it because of that. But also it's like, where it's the penultimate episode of the season, so of course things got real, because things always get real in the penultimate episode to a season most of the time. So it's understandable that that things worked out that way, I think, anyway. So not only I spoiled myself, but even before I spoiled myself by reading all the leaks online, I kind of figured things were kind of going to go this way. Did I have the exact details down? No, but it's kind of the general feel of how things were going to go, ending on a cliffhanger. I had that part right. So really, really fun, good episode. It kind of ran the gambit in terms of tone a little bit, because it starts off as tense and then it moves into kind of like light comedy hijinks for a moment, and then it goes back to tense for like the rest of the episode. Because of course we start with Kane, with Officer Kane on Coruscant, and a very cool look at Coruscant too, because it's all misty, it's all rainy. I don't know if that was actual rain or if that was like mist machines, because Coruscant is so urbanized and everything that I don't know if that part is like where the clouds would normally form in the atmosphere or what. So if they were like actually like in the middle of a rainstorm because the clouds weren't that high above them, or if that was mist machines or whatever. But I really liked the aesthetic. It was very Blade Runner. I thought that was really cool. And then of course, she makes contact with Moff Gideon, who we're seeing for the first time since the end of season 2. So it's been like 2 years or something like that at this point. So good to see him again. And then of course he goes and he talks to his little Shadow Council and all his little Imperial Remnant buddies. And the two big ones that get the most screen time appropriately are, of course, Brendol Hux, which is Armitage Hux's father from the sequel trilogy. So it was cool to have that connective tissue there, and for him to be played by I can't remember his name, but he's the brother of the guy that plays General Hux in the sequels. So that's cool. They kept that character, that character's family in the family, so to speak. So that was cool, and just another one of those mini nails in the coffin of people who for some strange reason thought that Filoni and Favreau were going to retcon the sequel trilogy, and now they're upset, and now they're turning on Mando, and it's apparent, it's pretty obvious. I don't know what they were thinking, but anyway. But then the other one that's a really big deal is we had Captain Gilad Pellaeon from the expanded universe in live action. Of course, he's kind of Thrawn's right hand man in the original Thrawn trilogy, and so it's really cool to have him here, especially since he is like spot on identical to art that is out there from the EU days, of what, just based on the descriptions from the Thrawn trilogy of what Pellaeon would look like. So it's just really, really cool that they found someone that looks the part. And of course he's British, so that helped. So it's really cool seeing Pellaeon, and they name dropped Thrawn several times. And so Pellaeon's all on this rah, let's get Thrawn back, because of course he served in the 7th Fleet. Pellaeon actually has a very small vocal cameo at the very end of Rebels in the last episode, when the 7th Fleet is being carried away by the Purrgil. Spoilers for Rebels, by the way, but I'm assuming you've seen Rebels if you're watching this. But so there's your spoiler warning, even though I've already spoiled it. When the 7th Fleet is getting carried off by the Purrgil into hyperspace, Thrawn contacts Captain Pellaeon. He's like, "Sir, they came out of hyperspace. I've never seen." And then the transmission cuts off, because presumably Pellaeon's Star Destroyer has been carried off into hyperspace by a Purrgil and out of comm range. So So yeah, it's cool so that probably removed him from the whole rest of the war and everything. Um, the question is like, was the whole Seventh Fleet taken to one location, or were they like spread out amongst the unknown regions and like they all had to kind of slowly find each other again? So it's like, so is Pelion like actively working with or for Thrawn here, or is it just like, hopeful, wishful thinking on his part that Thrawn's going to come back? I feel like it's more leaning towards he's actively working with Thrawn for Thrawn to really actually reemerge, because I think, Thrawn's obviously a smart guy. I feel like with that many egotistical remnants of the Empire working together like that, they kind of agree to work together as they have been. But then the second you throw a Grand Admiral into the mix like Thrawn, that's going to be that's going to potentially, there's going to be a leadership struggle. I find it interesting that there's been no mention of Grand Admiral Sloane so far, because she is around at this point in the timeline. We're assuming, because that's something that I think it's like, has she been dealt with? Has she been taken care of? Is she not like affiliated at all with this faction of Imperial remnants? Um, the Hux being there does kind of throw a bit of a wrench into that. It's like, because he was working with her, so it's like, have they cut ties? Is she forming the First Order while these other guys are over here trying to bring back the Empire, and eventually they get beat back, and so then they go scampering back to her. They're like, okay, we'll join your stupid First Order or whatever. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to work out, or if they're even going to acknowledge it, because of course that is kind of the issue, is that some people have, and I'm kind of in the same boat a little bit, is that it's clear Filoni and Favreau take inspiration from the books, but they don't adhere to them completely as rock solid canon, even the ones that are supposed to be rock solid canon. So Sloane, because Cobb Vanth, they for the most part got his story correct, but there's some small details there that have us scratching our heads that could just be, the unreliable narrator. But then with Sloane, it's like, are they going to mention her at all? How's that going to work out? But no, there could also be a story that comes along later that she's been that explains that she's out of the picture at this point, which would explain why Thrawn coming back and being a Grand Admiral and being a higher station over even a Moff, just because of course, Gideon is not a Grand Moff like Tarkin was. I think Tarkin was the only Grand Moff. Gideon is just a Moff, so he's high up on the ranks, but I think a Grand Admiral would still outrank him. So Thrawn coming back would really throw the power, the dichotomy of power for a loop if Thrawn would come back. So I feel like that's one of the reasons Gideon's not exactly happy with the idea of him coming back, because obviously he wants to be the one in charge. That's pretty apparent. But so yeah, it was really cool to have Brentol Hux and Captain Pelion there and everything, and talking about Thrawn. And the reason I feel like it's likely that another reason it's likely that Pelion is working with Thrawn, because it would not surprise me after we've had these, because they plan these things out well in advance of when they're having their announcements and stuff. It would not surprise me if, now that we know it's confirmed and we've got the first teaser trailer and everything out to the public and Star Wars Celebration has happened and all that, it would not surprise me if at the very end of the next episode, the main conflict is over. We've got some resolution for our characters for the meantime and everything, and then it cuts away, and then we have Lars Mikkelsen as Grand Admiral Thrawn in the flesh in like the last scene or something. And it's like we get like one or two quick lines out of him, and then it's like, to be continued in Ahsoka coming this August. Kind of like what they did with the Book of Boba Fett teaser at the end of season 2. That would not surprise me at all if they did that. And I'm also kind of hoping they do that, because I'm impatient at this point. I want to see and hear him as Thrawn. So yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do there. So yeah, that was a very, kind of, it's a long cold open. It's like a 10-minute cold open, and then we finally get the Mandalorian. Dun, 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 boom, 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 boom. Yeah, and then of course the title, The Spies, and everything. And I'm just gonna go ahead and address the elephant in the room. I am not going to speculate or anything on who The Spies refers to, mostly because we're just so close to the next episode at this point, because, these reviews come out on Mondays, the episodes drop on Wednesdays, so we're like a day and a half removed from when this video is going up to having the answer. So it's like some people are saying, obviously, one of them is obviously Officer Kane because she's infiltrated the New Republic. But then other people are going, it's like, well, so what is there one in the Mandalorian ranks? Is it the Armorer? Is it Axe Woves? Is it secretly Bo-Katan? It's like, they're throwing out all these different answers. So it's like, I'm not even going to bother speculating at this point because I honestly really kind of have no clue. I see the evidence for basically what everyone's like. I see the evidence for the Armor. I see the evidence for Axe Woves. I'm leaning a small bit more towards Axe Woves. A tiny bit, if it's one of those two. I totally see the argument for both, but I could also see a third option, which no one is really thinking about too heavily, is that there is no second spy, and The Spies just felt like a better title than The Spy, since Kane was only in the very beginning of the episode, and it was more the fact that, we're back with this Imperial remnant, and they're living in secrecy, kind of that being the plural. Even though it's but that's a stretch, and a little bit of a stretch in logic. So I just don't know. I just don't really know. So like I said, I'm not going to speculate. I'm just happy to sit back and let the show tell me who it is, if they even address it at all. And if they don't address it at all, then I think it's very possible that it's that last thing. But we shall find out. So yeah, but it was cool to go back to Mandalore. I always love seeing Mandalorians working together, fighting, and all that stuff. New Imperial Super Commandos with Beskar armor this time, because that was the problem the last time, is that they were wearing Stormtrooper Plastoid and not Beskar. So smart of Gideon to actually reinforce them with Beskar. I mean, if he's got his base on Mandalore, I mean, might as well utilize the resources. It's smart. I love IG-12. Grogu piloting IG-12, I think, is a really, really cool, smart choice, because it allows him to be in the action a little easier than just being in his pram and using the Force. And while that's cool, because we saw some of that in the second episode this season, giving him control of IG-12 and having the larger manipulator arms, because now he can pick up blasters. Now he can use blasters. He could wield the Darksaber now if he wanted to. He's had Jedi training from Luke. Does that include lightsaber training? Maybe. So maybe, and since it's picking him up with picking up the sort of the robot hand, it's like maybe it'd be easier to wield. So Grogu can be more firmly in the action at this point. And I think that's really smart, because otherwise you have to leave him behind, like last episode where he just hung out and played Space Shuffleboard with Lizzo and Jack Black, or put him with the Frog Couple or something like that, which we've done multiple times throughout this show. But he's had enough training. He's old enough at this point that giving him IG-12 is going to allow him to be more in on the action, and I think that's smart, so that way you don't have to invent all these narrative reasons to leave him behind. And like I said, the second episode of this season where the Mines of Mandalore, he's floating around in his pram, he's going for help, he's using the Force, he's doing flips and tricks and stuff. That was cool. That was working out well, but it's just that adorable floating little pram, it's just not really all that conventional for a firefight. So yeah, giving him IG-12, I think, is a smart choice, and also a hilarious choice, just because the second he gets it and they're walking down the street, just yes, 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 and just it kept going and going and going, and it went on just about the right amount of time of it to make it hilarious for me. I just really loved that. And so they've used it pretty effectively because they used it great for comedy there. And Din being upset with his toddler, this isn't working for me. But then later in the episode, I think it was a really good, meaningful beat when Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves are fighting. And like no one's stepping in because of their code of honor or whatever. And Grogu, because of his Jedi training, because of his sense of compassion and stuff being taught by Luke Skywalker, he's in the kind of their more pacifist ideals that Grogu is of two worlds. He knows sometimes fighting is necessary because of his time with the Mandalorians, but at the same time he's also been taught by a Jedi, which are supposed to be a little bit more pacifist. So he knows when it's time to not fight as well, where Mandalorians are a little bit more ready to always get into a scrape, as we see here, because they play space chess just a teensy bit differently than between the different clans. They've got slightly different rules. So so him stepping in and spamming the no button, I think was and him being peacemaker, I think is such a there's been a lot of people going, it's like, oh, Din and Grogu feel so meaningless in this season since now it's all about Bo-Katan. And I don't agree with that at all. I mean, that right there, I think, has shown a lot of growth on Grogu's part because he is a character. He's not just this cute little thing for us to go, oh, at. I mean, there is a lot of that involved, but he is an actual character. He is seen growth between Book of Boba Fett and now, where it's like him playing peacemaker. I think he's not able to speak really. He's just got a yes and no button now. And I think a question is going to be because of his upbringing and maybe losing out on some of those formative years. Maybe he's good. Maybe he's just going to be mute. Maybe that's going to be his thing, and their kind of workaround of does he speak like Yoda, which they've already kind of addressed with Yaddle and Tales of the Jedi, but I think I would honestly just be okay with him being a mute character because it's like he didn't. That the species is so sensitive and it lives for so long that it has a different development, and so there are certain points in this quote unquote infancy of him being a 50-year-old baby or whatever, where by the time he's 25, maybe that's when he needs to be starting to learn to talk. But around that time would be when the Jedi Order is in flames and the Empire is rising and he's being whisked away by Ahmed Best in a Naboo freighter. So it's like maybe he didn't have time to learn to talk when he was supposed to. So I'm totally on board for Grogu staying a mute character and just having the yes and no button. I think that in of itself as a gimmick could work really well, and I think it's already working well. At least just in this one episode. It could get tiresome going forward, and we'll have to wait and see on that. But I do really like what they've done with it so far. And like I said, I think Grogu is showing growth. He is an active character, even if he doesn't communicate in the traditional way. He has some formidable training now. He is a man. It's kind of funky to think about, but it's like he is a Mandalorian. He wears the sigil of Clan Mudhorn because he wears it under his little tunic or whatever. So if he were to be shot, he'd be okay. Hurt probably, but the Beskar would block the shot. So, he is wearing, and he's got the little, Beskar chainmail dress as well, or the shirt. So I think Grogu has shown a lot of, character growth this season in the little moments we've gotten with him. And same for Din Djarin as well, because, he started out this season, and after Book of Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett, he was very aimless. He didn't really have a purpose anymore. And he was trying to figure out what his purpose was. And he's got his kid back. He's like, okay, I've got this kid, but what this kid needs is a family. So he's like, I need to reconnect with the only real group of Mandalorians I know, which is the Children of the Watch. So I need to redeem myself. I find it's like, it also took him a minute to find them again in the first place. So I think that had something to do with it too, part of that aimlessness of, him hunting for them again. But, after that, it seems it's taken him a while to finally figure out that it's like, okay, I need to go do this thing. It's getting Grogu back partially. That, okay, this kid needs a larger family than just me. there's strength in numbers. So I need to redeem myself by creed, so that way, I can raise him amongst the other Mandalorians. And I think that's a big reason why that's important to him. And when, and he accomplishes that task. And then the rest of the season has been about, the same it's always been about in this show, is protecting Grogu, raising Grogu, making sure Grogu is taken care of. And now he's doing that as a Mandalorian father, making sure his son is being raised on the Wrestle Nair, the Six Tenets, the Way, whatever you want to call it. And now that also means, rejoining all Mandalorian clans under the Mandalore, which now it seems to be that, at least for now, it's Bo-Katan again. So his little speech to her about, I don't care about the Darksaber, that, we weren't raised on the Darksaber being this important thing. We were raised more on, a code of honor and respect. Forget about station and bloodlines. And so he's, it's like you have shown character and honor. And, it's at one point, there's a lot of subtext in the scene, but it's basically, it's like, you once saw me as a zealot and that the group I belonged to was a cult, but then you were able to see past your prejudices and accept us as Mandalorians, even if you didn't completely agree with all of our teachings. And so it's like, he sees her as worthy of leading his clan now. And so that's why he's like, I swear loyalty to you, and, I will follow you until your song is written. And I think I think it's also an important character note for Bo-Katan, because she's definitely a character that is constantly suffering from self-doubt. And it takes reminders every now and then of people saying to her, hey, you're not worthless. You can do this, even though you failed, and you failed in the past. But just because you failed doesn't mean you won't succeed eventually. So we will follow you. Sabine did that in Rebels. Again, spoilers for Rebels, but now Din Djarin's doing that now. It feels. I'm going to be interested to see the total. We're finally wrapping all of this up with a bow here. However long that takes, because like I talked about earlier this season, it does feel a little repetitive with all the jumping around we've done. And also, missing some very important context because we see her in Rebels, and then she's like, all right, let's reclaim Mandalore. And then she shows up in the Mandalorian, and she's like, yeah, that didn't work out too well. And I'm like, can we see that? That is like my one big problem with Star Wars, is kind of the jumping around the timeline. On the whole, jumping around the timeline isn't necessarily the worst thing ever, because it does allow us to explore a lot of different ideas and stories. But at the same time, it does make, when you're watching these things as they come out and not after the fact, it makes things seem a little disjointed sometimes. You have to go back and actually watch things in chronological order and to finally go, oh, okay, I'm with you now. Okay. Clone Wars had that problem a couple times. Now like Bo-Katan being this character that's, her story is spread across like 3 different shows now. She's in a similar boat where it's like she feels a little disjointed, but I think if you were to watch her all the way through, when her song is written, then I think it's gonna flow better. Especially because I do hope that we get, like, because she mentioned it, like, Moff Gideon tricked me. He stole the Darksaber. He tried to wipe everyone out anyway. That's not how I thought this was gonna go, because I was younger, and foolish, and he betrayed us. So I am curious to actually see that play out, because it is one thing about hearing it. It's kind of like, Rex in the beginning of season 2 of Rebels, where he's like, I know Ahsoka Tano. I fought with her from the Battle of Christophsis to the Siege of Mandalore. And we're like, what does that mean? What's the Siege of Mandalore? We keep hearing this thing get referenced, but we don't know what it means. Please tell us what this means. And then from that point, it was still like another 4 or 5 years, before we got season 7 of Clone Wars. And we finally got to see what the heck that even meant. So I'm used to it at this point, but I do still kind of go. Can we just tell a story from point A to point B for once in this franchise, please? I mean, I guess in a way, it's just very. That's just how Star Wars works. The first movie was the fourth one, so what are you gonna do? So, anyway, so yeah, and of course we end the episode on a cliffhanger, with Din Djarin captured, the Mandalorians in retreat. It seems like their fleet is about to be under attack by TIE fighters. I'm assuming we're about to see a big space battle take place. Potential reveal of another traitor in the midst of the Mandalorians, a spy. Who knows? We'll find out. And of course, the big moment is Paz Vizsla's death. Another Vizsla down, but at least this one was a good one. Because if Tor Vizsla is canon, which would be pre-Vizsla's father, then, that's a bloodline that after went sour at one point, because you have Tar Vizsla, who's the original Mandalorian Jedi who created the Darksaber. We don't know much about him except through not legends as in the expanded universe, but legends in the canon, because he's such an old character. He's been dead for millennia. We don't really know much about him, but him being a Jedi, I'm assuming he was an okay guy. I guess we'll have to, maybe we'll get that story one day. But I'm assuming he was an okay guy. But eventually the bloodline gets to Tor Vizsla, who's just a great big old thug, basically. And then you have his son Pre Vizsla, who's a straight up terrorist. And then, and of course, that's if Tor is canon, of course. He may not be. Who knows what they're gonna? But I mean, they kind of reference Jango Fett fighting in the Mandalorian Civil Wars, so it's like maybe parts of that story is canon. Jango Fett opened seasons. It's a comic book from like 2002. So now we get, it's like now we get down the line. And now we're to Paz Vizsla. So it's like, is he a cousin? Is he a younger brother? It's like, where is he on the family tree? And, this guy doesn't seem like he was a bad guy. He fought honorably. He was a religious zealot, sure. But, he came around in the end. He's like, I have had my differences with this man. But everything he has done has been for the betterment of Mandalorians. For himself, for the clan, for his foundling. So I will fight and I will die with this man. And that's what he does, unfortunately. But what a way to go out, especially taking on all those super commandos and, of course, the Praetorian Guards, which is just, again, it's like there's multiple nails in the coffin of the sequel trilogy retcon theory. And this is another one where it's like, oh, look, it's the Praetorian Guards. I wonder where we've seen them before. Maybe from that movie that I'm scared to even say the name of because of the fan backlash against it. So, yeah. So cool design. I think I actually prefer this design, this kind of iterative in-between design from what we get in The Last Jedi, mostly because their designs in The Last Jedi, I'm sitting there thinking, how do they see? There's no eye holes. How do they see? And I know it's Star Wars, that they probably got sensors in there and they can see out of like the whole helmet or whatever, and it's not an issue. But I'm still just sitting there like, how do they see? Just a weird human thing where it's like, there's no eye holes. I don't know how they're seeing out of that. But I like this kind of iterative design where it seems like they're prototyping some first order armor with this, because like their gauntlets are red stormtrooper armor from the Imperial era, but then their chest plates are we don't really get too good a look, but it seems like maybe even their leg plates and stuff like that, that's all what we will eventually know as first order stormtrooper armor. And then they've got, like more Praetorian Guard looking shoulder pads and stuff. And then, the helmets are like a mix between the old Republic Senate Commandos and then the Imperial Guard, and then what we know as the Praetorian Guard. So I love the mix mashing of designs there to have this iterative design in between stuff. Kind of like, the Ralph McQuarrie inspired TK Trooper armor, which is in between Phase 2 clones and Stormtrooper armor in Bad Batch. So yeah, really good episode. I really liked it. A lot of cool things going on here. I'm very excited for the finale. Excited to see where it goes. I just have to say, if it ends on a stupid cliffhanger, I am going to lose my mind. It's like, and what I mean by it's like, if there's some unresolved things that is connective tissue for another season, I'm fine with that. But like an actual, cliffhanger where like a huge, last minute, oh, hey, Moff Gideon kidnapped Grogu again. Now we got to go find him again. Something like that. It's like, where did they go? Something like that. And we're going to have to wait, a year, 2 years or whatever to learn more. But it's like, nah, I'm not okay with that. I'm going to be very angry about that. But if it's like, oh yeah, we cleared up, we cleared most of our quest log on this, but there is just this one little thing we forgot to do. It's like, oh, or Moff Gideon escaped at the last second with a twirl of his mustache, going, "I'll be back, Mando." If he does that and then jumps to hyperspace, and that's the only like lingering plot thread on top of which is further building into the resurgence of the Empire and the eventual rise of the First Order, that I'm going to be fine with. But if it's some like massive thing, no. No, sorry. I'm not going to be okay with that because Rebels kind of ended off on a massive thing like that. And it's been 5 years since, it's taken us 5 years to finally get some resolution on that. And it's been a painstaking wait, let me tell you. I have, I've been sitting here for 5 years wondering where the heck Ezra and Thrawn went to. And I'm finally about to get answers about dang time. So they better not do that with Mando as well. So that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the finale this week. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below. And I will see you guys next time for the finale. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye.